On today's episode of Lick the Spoon, I'm going to take you guys out on a garden tour, give you some quick tricks and tips on what to do to grow a healthy harvest. Now, before we go out there, I just want to preface this with telling you that my garden space is smaller. We moved here a couple years ago. I haven't expanded it out. We live in the epicenter of town. You'll probably hear traffic whenever we get out there, but that will just show you that you can garden anywhere. All right, let's go. We'll start right here on the back porch. I've got some seedlings already growing. This basil I started, I think, in February. I haven't found a place to plant it in the ground yet, so it's just chilling out here. I usually get flowers at our local greenhouse and just pot them together because I like pretty things. And here's some seedlings. Whenever you're growing seedlings, you don't want to just throw them out in the sun for a full day and a full night. You want to make sure to introduce them. Like you'll put your brand new baby seedlings out in the sun and then bring them back in. Just a little tip. All right, so I wanted to also show you a couple more planters that I have. I got this little beauty at a junk show where they sell lots of metal pieces. I drilled some holes in it and made a cute planter out of it. I think it's a bread box, maybe? A vintage bread box. Okay. So this right here is the stance of my garden. Besides what's in here, there's flowers, but this is mainly the bulk of my veggies. I have a little fence around it to keep some of the critters out. Believe it or not, in the center of town, we have deer. And last year I learned my lesson by not having a fence around my vegetables, and the deer came at night and just ate everything down to the stem about that much. So this year, hopefully this will prevent it. They can still jump over it, but it seems to have deterred them so far. All right, come on in. So we'll start right here. This is a cattle panel, and I love this thing because vertical gardening means I have more room. If I am limited on space, which I am here, you can put plants that will grow up and around instead of taking all your space down in your bed. A lot of times you can grow pole beans, and these are sugar snap peas. When it gets really, really hot, this is just the beginning of June, July and August gonna come along, and these are gonna stop producing because they're colder weather crop. But right now, me and my kids are enjoying the sugar snap peas. They're so good. We love to just come out here in the morning and start crunching on some sugar snap peas. I harvested most of them yesterday and took them down to my father because he likes them too. But if you want to get a close-up, you can see a couple sugar snap peas coming on here that I missed yesterday, but I got a pretty big harvest. On this side of the cattle panel, we have cucumbers growing. They're not super big yet. As soon as that's pollinated, the little flower at the tip there, this will grow bigger and bigger and be delicious. I've got 3 cucumber plants, and around the cucumber plants I have chamomile, which I'm super excited about. This is my first year growing chamomile, and we'll get a close-up of the flowers, and I'll tell you a little bit about harvesting and enjoying chamomile tea fresh from your garden. Okay, these flowers are right at perfect. So what you do is you just take the tip off right here, and you do that with all your flowers that are bloomed out like that. You lay them on a plate for about 3 weeks. It can be in a window or in a dark closet, whatever you have, just as long as they're dry. And it takes about 3 weeks, and when they're dry, you can put them in a mason jar and store them for a long time to enjoy through the winter or whenever you want to bust this out. If you've got a sore throat, super good medicinal property. You can also enjoy chamomile fresh if you want to pick about, I don't know, 8 or 10 flowers. You can get your about 8 ounces of water, get it boiling, pour it over your fresh flowers, and put a tablespoon of honey in there. That is delicious too. So you don't have to wait 3 weeks. The 3 weeks process is just for storage purposes only. We have a bunny cage here. I read the Roots and Refuge gardening book, and I learned that the only type, or one of the only types of direct fertilizers you can use without it aging is bunny poop. You can literally take bunny poop out of the cage and put it directly into your dirt, and it won't burn your plants. Fun fact, if you have the space, I would recommend getting a bunny because it's really great for your plants. I've got some beets here. This is my first year growing beets. They're a little scattered. My soil, I'm still amending it. It's only been here a couple years, but it is definitely improved from the last year. We'll see how the beets turn out in a later video. Yes, I have a rogue tomato plant right there. I'm just gonna let it go and see what happens. Bush beans, I've got about eight beans here. Not eight beans, but you know, 8 bush bean plants. Super proud of my cabbages. Some people have a difficulty growing cabbages because of the worms. These little cute, pretty white butterflies come by every day, and they lay their eggs on my cabbages, and these eggs produce these stupid worms that drive me nuts, and those worms eat my cabbages. But I have a solution which has helped me keep them growing, and I will show you what that is in a minute. I pulled a few heads of lettuce yesterday, took it over to my dad to share. That's the beautiful part of gardening. If you have overabundance and you're not gonna eat 10 heads of lettuce, you can share with your family and friends. So yeah, it's looking a little sparse today, but that's only because I pulled yesterday. Lettuce is a cold crop. You grow normally in the spring and the fall, because in the heat of summer, lettuces won't do good at all. I'm in zone 6B, FYI. So the summers here get really hot and humid, and your lettuce will just, it won't move in the heat. So whenever the real heat, humidity comes, all this lettuce will be gone and replaced by some summer squash. This kale is gonna be in next week's episode, right, Jess? Yeah. We're gonna pull it and we're gonna make kale chips, which are super delicious. Next to my sugar snap peas on this side of the cattle panel, I have onions growing. This is the first year that I put them in the bed. Apparently, I didn't know this, but Jess's family member told her this. If you leave these all year long, allow them to stay in the ground and grow on into next year, the bulbs will get bigger. If I pulled these right now, they're like that big. They're super tiny. But you can also, the cool thing with these is you can also use the green stems for green onions. So multi-purpose, you can pull it in a year or leave it up to you. Here I have 6 beefsteak tomatoes. This year I'm only doing 6 tomatoes, and they're beefsteak. They're pretty high yielding. Last year I did some pink brandywine tomatoes. That's my absolute favorite taste, but they don't produce very much, at least in my zone. So this year I'm just doing beefsteak and keeping it easy. So not only do the worms love to attack my cabbages, they also love to attack my tomato plants. In order to prevent that, I plant marigolds and basil in between each plant. Planting the marigolds and the basil in between each tomato plant has staved off the worms for a few years now. So I am gonna keep doing that every year, and that way I don't have to deal with those nasty, juicy corn worms eating away at my tomatoes. I don't know if you've noticed, but there's some patches of my garden that I've placed hay. I want to have all of my garden covered in hay, and I'll tell you why. The hay is really good at keeping moisture locked into your soil. That way you don't have to water as frequently in your beds. It's really good at keeping your plants moist, and especially through the heat in the summer months, the hay is very beneficial. And I've also read that if you do not cover earth up, she will cover herself, meaning she will cover herself with weeds. So it's best to put hay down in between all of your plants. to keep the weeds low and also keep the moisture locked in. Okay, now this doesn't look like much, but this is the most important, crucial part of my garden, and that is the compost. This past week, Jess mentioned it in her video, the beef stew and bread video. She mentioned that I will take those scraps from her chopped vegetables and put them in a compost. Now I want to show you my compost. You see them? So those worms are what you want. They make this soil super healthy. What I do is I keep a metal pot in my kitchen underneath the sink, and I throw every fruit and vegetable scrap from my kitchen into that pot. And then that pot, when it's full, I bring it out here and toss it over the railing. And over time, it makes beautiful dirt, worm-filled dirt that is essential to your garden because it's packed full of nutrients that have decayed. And the worms eat it, love it. Worms are super beneficial for your garden. And compost can be super easy. You don't have to get any special equipment. Just find an area anywhere in your backyard and start piling veggie scraps, leaves, twigs, whatever you have, just start piling it in, and it'll work itself out. So I want to talk about this for just a second. This is called fish fertilizer. And I got this at a local hardware store. I'm pretty sure Walmart's selling it right now, at least the Walmart that I'm next to. You add 2 tablespoons per gallon of water. And I fertilize my plants with this about once a week. The thing that I love about this specifically is that it won't burn my plants. A lot of like fertilizers that you get from your store, you have to be super careful and they just burn the living daylights out of them. So this is my go-to, especially for my vegetables and the things that I'm going to consume. Oh yeah, we can do the zucchini. I've got 4 zucchini plants. They're still pretty young, but so far so good. I put compost on them and some fish fertilizer, and they're coming along. Look at that little zucchini baby. Okay, so later on in the season, later on in this lick the spoon season, I'm going to show you some things about pests with the zucchini. It can be really hard to grow zucchini in the summer months because there are things called bollworms and squash bugs that love zucchini even more than you do. So I'm gonna do an episode about how to care and maintain for my zucchinis. Right now I don't have too much of an issue, but that's just because it's early in the season and I know what's coming. Earlier I was talking to you about the worms that love to consume my cabbage and tomato plants, and I have an organic natural solution for that, which I'm super excited about because I eat it too, so I don't want to put chemicals on my fruits and vegetables. So this is called BT Worm and Caterpillar Killer. I think Walmart sells this too. You mix 1 tablespoon per gallon of water. Now this is a half a gallon sprayer, so I just did half a tablespoon in my sprayer, shook it up, and then sprayed the ever living daylights out of my cabbage. This is a naturally occurring bacteria in the soil. And what this does is the caterpillar or the worm, whatever it's called, that's consuming my cabbages will get this in their system and it kills them. And it doesn't harm anything else. So that's the cool part of this organic pesticide. Another in the kitchen garden trick besides the compost bin under my sink is crushed up eggshells. Every time we have breakfast, I will put some eggshells on a plate, let them dry out a little bit, and then put them in my mortar and pestle because I like to crush them up and plant them in, especially with my peppers. Crushed up eggshells are really good in your pepper plants and just a really good source of compost and nutrients all together.